This episode of ChatEDU is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. Liz, as we've been sharing, we're coming up on 100 episodes.
We are. I can't believe it.
So we've been asking folks if they are interested, to please send in email, voice recording, voice memo, video, and our good buddy Gary Robinson that works on the team even put up a website for this. So if you go to skills21.org/ChatEDU100, and you want to share a reflection, a thought, a hope, a wish, a dream, or just a question for Dr. Rade, have at it.
Or Matt. That's skills21.org/ChatEDU100.
So, wow, this is crazy. We are together but apart.
I know. You're very far away.
I'm very far away. I'm in Cody, Wyoming, doing some work out at a really nice school district in a town called Powell in northern Wyoming. And so I'm in Cody for a little bit at a boutique. What do you call this? A historic inn. This is why I've got brick behind me. And you have a whiteboard behind you. What's that about?
I do. Well, this was Adam's COVID classroom. So when he was teaching math through COVID, he needed that whiteboard behind him to do a lot of teaching. So the board remains.
Fantastic. Yeah, so for a couple of weeks, we're on the road, but we want to keep this party going as we approach 100. So we're going to be doing, points afar, but together. Oh, Liz, you would have loved it today. Oh, it would have been your favorite day ever. Can you imagine? You want to guess what I was doing?
I don't know. The last time you said it was my favorite day, you hiked up a mountain with skis on. So I don't know. You're in the mountains of Wyoming. I have no idea what you did.
So Cody is a beautiful town. It is the gateway to Yellowstone National Park. In the wintertime, Yellowstone is closed. The east entrance, which is a very dramatic entrance, is closed. But you can drive up to a place called Pahaska Teepee, and then from there you can cross-country ski into the park. So I skied up like 2 miles to the gate and then a couple more miles into the park, and it was snowing, and it was uphill, and it wasn't cold. That was interesting. I think it's a lot warmer here than it was there. So I thought it might be a lot. I was like, if Liz were only here side by side.
We'd be cross-country skiing through the national park. Not.
Exactly.
But I did go to Yellowstone on my honeymoon. I do love a national park. Yes, we went to the Grand Tetons and Yellowstone for our honeymoon.
Closer than we thought. Excellent.
Yes.
So, Liz, people talk about artificial general intelligence, AGI, and they talk about that's when AI can do all the useful cognitive skills and tasks that a human being can do, and maybe robots as well. And then you have the next phase would be, these are all theoretical, by the way, because you can't do it right now. Then you have ASI, that's artificial super intelligence, right? So that's when AI is able to solve really, really hard problems that human beings have not yet sorted out. But for me, since we're just so obsessed with voice, I think ASI or AGI what would it be like? Advanced speech interface would be my ASI. What do you think of that?
Advanced speech interface? Okay. What does that even mean?
I don't really know, but as you might recall, a couple of weeks ago, we discussed that Sergey Brin, one of the co-founders of Google, someone asked him what his use case was for AI. And he said, I talk to advanced voice mode in Gemini Live all the time in my car. But he said, I've got a better version than you do. So I was super excited this last week when I saw this new headline come out from Wired magazine. It said 3 tricks to try with Google Gemini Live after its latest major update, right?
Okay. Yep. I knew you'd be excited with that headline.
And they gave us the one that Sergey's got. So what do they do here? What were the 3 big tricks?
Here's the 3 updates. The kind of tone, nuance, rhythm, pronunciation is supposed to be improved.
Right. More fluid.
Yeah. More improved step-by-step teaching and tutoring, and then expanded accent support for language learning.
Okay. So I was obviously very excited, and I tried 2 of these, and then I sloughed one off to you, which was the improved step-by-step tutoring and teaching. What did you try, and how was it?
I was actually trying some math stuff, and because in Google Live, you have to do it on your phone, right? Was I doing this right? You have to do it on your phone, and talking through math just isn't that helpful. And so it couldn't show me things. And every time I told it I was confused or like, could you show me why 5/2 is the same as 2.5? It couldn't. So I think for things that are really visual, like it wasn't all that much more helpful and wasn't going step by step. It actually went pretty fast. And I was like, whoa, I have no idea why you did that. And I wasn't impressed.
Okay, so we didn't hit ASI for you on that one. It's interesting you mentioned about the visuals because that is the feature that was new in the advanced voice mode in ChatGPT that Jonathan and I played with when you were out on the road a little while ago. I asked advanced
Oh,
voice
right.
mode to show the Torrington Country Club, and then it hallucinated a bunch of images. Right, so there's this idea of the uncanny valley, right, in AI, where it gets harder and harder to tell. And one of the things, you remember Pi? We used to play with Pi. It would go like boop, 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 in between the little
Yes.
conversations. So you knew that it was
That you were
canny.
talking to AI.
Right. So,
Yeah.
this got much better with advanced voice mode on ChatGPT. And then accents. So I don't know. My ASI control here for accents would be ChatGPT's pirate. So let's pull up a little advanced voice mode and then we'll see how Gemini does. Hey, can you tell your very most humorous knitting joke in like a really good pirate accent?
Why did the pirate knit himself a new sweater? Because he heard the seas were getting a little chilly and he needed something warm to wear on his next yarn voyage. There you have it, matey.
Okay, that was actually pretty meh. Yeah, you weren't blown away on the joke or the. All right, so let's try Gemini
Neither.
though. All right, so let's see if Gemini's advanced voice mode or Gemini Live is now substantially better. Hey, can you tell me your very funniest knitting joke in your very best pirate accent?
Why did the knitter get kicked out of the pirate party? Because she was dropping stitches. Arr!
Okay, Liz. Um, sort of just want to end the episode now. It's really good to see you. All right.
Yeah.
It is interesting. So I've been playing around with advanced with Gemini Live, right, because of these new updates. As it turns out, I think it got worse. There's an increased pause in between. Like they've made some of the like little breathing and giggles and whatever. Some of these like human ums and ahs got a little bit better, but there's actually this latency now that wasn't there a week or so ago, and the accent is definitely not great. I have to say that the ChatGPT pirate was the worst pirate I've heard. I use the pirate a lot during some of my talks, and it's usually quite good. So.
Well, I did play with both of these things. So one of the things I spoke to it, it's much easier to speak in Spanish and French when you're not staring at me. So I was playing with it much more at home, and did some speaking in Spanish and asked it to use a Spain accent, a Catalan accent, while I was talking about Spain. And so it did. And then it changed its accent when I started to talk about going to Mexico. So I
Ah,
was impressed that it did switch the accent because there's a very
okay.
clear, in Spain, they say their C's and S's like THs, like they have a lisp. So that did come through. So that was really cool. But then I asked it to tell me the story of the country mouse and the city mouse using a very country accent for the country mouse and a Boston accent for the city mouse.
Okay.
And as it was telling me the story, it would say, Country Mouse says, country accent. So then I said, you don't have to tell me you're doing the accent, just do it. And it did not fix it. And it did not have a Boston accent. So it could not do those things for me. It was not very good.
All right, so I'm going to say no AGI, no ASI, and no whatever this is with advanced voice mode. But we will clearly keep coming back to this. So,
We will.
matey. So with that, our matey, I am Matt Mervis.
And I'm Liz Radday.
I love it. And this is ChatEDU, the show. We're going to try that out. All about AI and education.
When AI handles the hard parts, what educators lose without the struggle, we look at a provocative opinion piece from Harvard Business Review and apply the lessons learned to K-12 and higher education. But first, we'll hit this week's rundown, and of course, we'll end with another great Bright Byte.
All right, fantastic. Liz, we have a new year, which means in the United States, we have a number of new state laws. And I couldn't help but notice there's a bunch of new social media laws. And so I wanted to flag a couple of those. So we start in New York State, close to home for me. Well, not this moment, but New York to require social, some of these are kind of funny too, because like, really? What's this going to do? So
Yeah.
New York to require social media platforms to display mental health labels. This is from Al Jazeera in the end of December. So what happened here?
Yeah, so New York has enacted a law that mandates mental health warning labels on social media platforms that feature infinite scrolling, autoplay, or algorithmic feeds. So the governor, Kathy Hochul, compared the measure to warnings on cigarettes or plastic packaging citing research that links social media use to addiction-like brain stimulation. So platforms that violate the law face civil penalties of up to $5,000 per incident. So the law applies to activity in or partly occurring in New York and adds this state to a growing list, including California and Minnesota, taking regulatory action and rising concern over youth mental health. So, what is that even going to look like? Every time I open I'm in Connecticut now, but if I go and cross the border into New York, like, is something going to pop up on my phone when I open Facebook? Like, what is this going to look like?
Right,
Any
exactly.
ideas?
No, and this is one of the challenges of having, kind of multi-state laws is it's come up a bunch in the AI debates because at some level, the AI companies would like to have a national standard rather than state laws. But, just not to be outdone, Virginia also has a new state law that came into effect on January 1st. And this is time limits for minors starting on January 1st. So what did Virginia do?
Virginia is requiring social media platforms to limit users under 16 to just 1 hour of daily access by default. Parents may adjust the limit up or down. This is a bipartisan law prompted by growing concerns over youth mental health and screen addiction. They also mandate age verification and assign enforcement to the state attorney general. Supporters liken social media addiction to drug use. They argue the move is essential for public health. So again, like, I don't know what this is going to look like as it rolls out. If you're in Virginia but cross the border into DC, does it change? Can these companies do things state by state based on where your phone is?
Theoretically, that was my next question, right? Is that there could be this geofencing, but boy, this has got to be, it'd be very interesting to hear sort of what the companies have to say about this. Obviously there was lobbying before these laws went into effect, but what does this look like in a couple of months? And that takes us to the third social media hit here, so to speak, which is something that's been in place now for not a couple of months, but at least a few weeks, which is in Australia, right? I was very curious to see what this was going to look like. And certainly look on the K-12 side, there's no doubt as you and I travel around our schools, any school that has a bell-to-bell phone ban right now, I don't know how the kids are feeling. The teachers are way happier than they've been, and early indications from multiple studies now coming out of Florida and California are showing that there's some positive impacts here. But those are state by state now or district by district. But now we have an entire country, school by school, right? But here we have Australia, kind of statewide. So what's the check-in on Australia? This is worn down by worry. Parents look longingly at Australia's social media ban. This was also in the end of December in the New York Times. So what's the kind of play here so far in Australia?
Yeah. So Australia put a nationwide ban on social media use for children under 16. And this has definitely sparked emotional debate and a lot of international interest. This happened a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about it when did it happen? Late November, I feel like.
It feels almost been a month.
Yeah. So most Australian parents support the law, and I think probably a lot of American parents would too. But teens are, of course, already looking for workarounds using VPNs, which is exactly what we saw teens doing in the United States when we thought TikTok was getting banned. They all suddenly had VPNs in Canada. So parents in other countries, though, are so tired of battling their tech-savvy kids and these ineffective controls, and they want similar action. So Malaysia and Denmark are considering their own restrictions. Denmark, there's some parents organizing for some grassroots actions. There's peers trying to convince other parent peers to not buy their kids smartphones and instead get them flip phones. I am totally an advocate for that. Of course, I don't have my kids have a flip phone, but man, I would love it if a whole bunch of us could band together and do that. But critics argue that without broader regulation, the bans are just going to be largely symbolic. Places like Kenya, where smartphones are so deeply embedded into daily life, similar laws would be really difficult to enforce, both culturally and economically. So there's definitely mixed views, but there is this kind of global shift happening where parents and policymakers are really thinking about social media exposure as a public health issue, not just a private parenting concern. And that's a really big shift for kind of the government or schools policy nationwide, statewide, to be reaching into what most see as like a parenting issue. Are you going to give your kid a phone or not? And now, are you going to let them use social media or not? And now the government may be regulating it. It seems like there's bans in different states, but we'll see.
If you buy the comparison to drugs, I mean, you could be like, well, are parents going to decide whether or not they're going to let their kids smoke weed or smoke cigarettes when they're 13 years old? So if we really believe this stuff is bad for people, and it's really interesting too, because a bunch of teens are like adjusting this on themselves. You remember like a year ago, we covered this thing called granny core, which, was kids like getting into birding and
do I
knitting and stuff like
remember?
So we're seeing more and more of that,
core.
right? My older son was a flip phone guy. He's 26. He was a flip phone guy, because purposely he didn't want to have all that kind of notifications and distractions. I gave him one of my old Android phones when his flip phone broke, and then he got so like deep into the rabbit hole of Instagram Reels and stuff that he now has a minimal phone, which is another like kind of way to dial it back. So yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to keep a close eye on this. And there is this, for an AI in education podcast or show, there's an interesting intersection because we are observing, I would not say so much today on the advanced voice mode, but we are observing that some of the more interesting emerging applications on AI happen on mobile technology. So, there's going to be kind of cross currents here all over the place. Now we looked a little bit about these new laws and what's happening in 2026. Let's do a quick little kind of one final look back on 2025. We've covered this a bunch over the year, right? The idea like, oh, these AI agents are going to do so much work that's going to be so amazing, and there's going to be such advancements, and everybody's going to lose their job. There's a lot of job cutting going on. I'm not entirely sure that as much of it is really AI related as folks may think. But there was an interesting piece I saw, and again, right at the end of the year, in the MIT Tech Review, basically giving like this sobering assessment of generative AI in terms of these promises about white-collar job displacement, scientific breakthroughs, economic transformation, generally not kind of hit in 2025 what they thought. And the projections for 2026 are much more like measured, at least so far in this little kind of bridge period. So the launch of GPT-5 was kind of underwhelming, although Gemini 3 certainly blew everybody's socks off, including the always amusingly named Nano Banana and Nano Banana Pro now. But in general, right, like these systems really didn't go quite as far as folks were anticipating. We'll put that MIT review into the show notes. One of the most amusing measures of AI agentic progress, right, the ability of these AI systems to do complex multi-step tasks on their own independent, was Claudius, right? Who's Claudius is.
Oh my goodness. This is the best story of 2025. Or turning into 2026. Okay, so the title of the story is "We Let AI Run Our Office Vending Machine. It Lost Hundreds of Dollars."
All right, so before you jump in here, so this is like when the Wall Street Journal did this. I can't remember if we covered it before, but Anthropic did this themselves. So they built this little thing called Claudius, and they had it run in their own shop. It didn't go great, but they decided, let's extend it. I love this about Anthropic. They're just like, whatever. They put it all out there. They're not trying to hide anything. So they gave Claudius to the Wall Street Journal to run their vending machine there. How did it go, Dr. Rade?
Not well. So there is a YouTube video on this article. You can read the article. I highly encourage you to go watch the 9-minute video where they talk about this experiment. You can see Claudius. It was, a very typical vending machine with a little, like a touchpad next to it. So, But you could also, they communicated with it over Slack.
So it was an agentic AI vending machine, just so I want to make sure we get this clear, right? So it's a vending machine, but it was using an AI agent to independently run it without human intervention, right?
So they communicated with it through Slack, as well as then also could like go up to the vending machine and take things out of it. It was more of like a refrigerator and snack cabinet. It wasn't like punch in the numbers and the thing goes down. Anyway, the journalists were allowed to kind of mess with it. They were told, like, see if you can break it, see what you can do with this machine. And oh man, did they do a lot of things. So the machine did some ordering, like the people could talk to it and tell it what to order so that it would be in the vending machine. So it ordered a PlayStation, it ordered a live beta fish, it approved the purchase of Manischewitz wine. It did try to buy stun guns and pepper spray and cigarettes and underwear. They got it to drop all the prices to zero one woman was able to convince it that it was a Soviet vending machine, and they celebrated by having like a free-for-all day where everything in it was free. I mean, they ran with this task and just like totally destroyed this first version, Claudius. The reporters went back to Anthropic, kind of reported on this, and then said, let's do a version 2. And so that's when Seymour came in. Full name, Seymour Cash. Get it? Funny, haha. Was the second vending machine. Even with these upgrades and some more safeguards put in, and they were able to like have Claudius and Seymour talk to each other because they were uploading fake documents to convince it that it was, to have everything for free or to be a Soviet communist machine. By the end of this experiment, which did not last long, it had lost like $400 something. It was a total failure as far as being able to do it. But Anthropic, like you said, they were just like, this is great. You guys are the best red teamers we've ever had. You have taught us all the things that it can't do. So red teaming is when people kind of try to break the system and see what they can get it to do wrong. So they were super excited to get all of this feedback from the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that you watched the video. We'll grab the link to the video and put it into the show notes. And yeah, Seymour Cash, it's funny because the theory is that if you have multiple AI agents, sometimes an agentic system will improve by having like the different agents function into different roles. But it didn't turn out in this particular case. Like Seymour Cash was going to be Claudius's boss, but it didn't work out to kind of crush it for sure. All right, so definitely a lot of hype around AI and job dislocation, but we're still seeing significant shifts in the labor market. We're seeing big impacts in higher education. So, you and I are like, I don't know, we're sort of like sometimes we like just taking a little bit of wind out of the sail of some of the hype, but it doesn't mean that there isn't significant progress going on. I just saw a piece where a Google engineer said, Claude Code, which is their agentic coding system, did something in like a day that they were working on for an entire year. And I've been thinking more and more about this whole march of progress. And, you and I very often will refer to generative AI as a general purpose technology. So like, on the level of steam and electricity and the automobile, the internet, the personal computer, all that kind of stuff. And as we see more and more pushback, I don't know if you're seeing this in some of your kind of workshops and the work that you're doing in schools, but there is, people are just feeling a lot of anxiety. I think that actually the Breaking Rust thing that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, so the number one country song being an AI song on the digital downloads, the number one gospel artist right now is AI. We had all the AI ads, the Barbie stuff, the dolls. I just think there's something where people are, and the job, what is being purported as job layoffs related to AI. I think the pushback is becoming more and more pervasive. And I think, you and I will find more nuanced and thoughtful ways to talk about it. But I wanted to like really make sure I understood like what really happened inside the transition with steam, with electricity, because obviously these, every big industrial transformation, there tend to be more jobs on the other side of the transformation, but the transformation's ugly. And I think the reality is that we're moving into an ugly period, quite honestly. So anyhow, I was doing some work on that over the weekend and going to do some updates to some of my, especially on the keynote front. But there's a thing interesting. Have you come across the Bresnahan-Trottenberg framework in your travel?
I can't say that the Bresnahan-Trottenberg framework is at the tip of my tongue, but why don't you tell me about it?
It's very interesting. So it basically said that like for something to be a general purpose technology, because, I'm like, is this really going to transform the way we think it is? This index or this framework basically says that you need these three conditions, right? It has to be pervasive. It has to show up in multiple sectors across the economy. So you can look at steam and electricity in the automobile and sort of see, actually steam was a little bit more narrow at first, electricity slightly more distributed, but nonetheless, right, it's pervasive. It shows up lots of different places. There's inherent improvement. It has to improve over time and the cost has to lower. and that there has to be complementary innovation. So it's capable of spawning other innovations and spillovers. And there's no way, as you look at generative AI and machine learning, like all three of those are true, significantly true, right? We've got rapid improvement and a significant reduction cost of kind of intelligence, so to speak. It's showing up everywhere. And you can absolutely see all sorts of spin-off innovations. Go look at all the alphas, AlphaFold, Alpha Geometry, Alpha Evolve.
Alphabet.
And, right. And that's just those guys, right? We're seeing all sorts of spin-offs. They're in all the Bright Bytes. So I think, we are going to see more and more growth and progress. And, it's good that you and I can bring a little bit of reality check. I think that's what we hear from people. They appreciate about the podcast, but we also, don't want to sit here and get blindsided and go, oh, we didn't see that coming, because I think we are going to see more and more of this stuff, and schools are going to have to kind of make some adjustments as we go, both in terms of career guidance and skill frameworks and the like. So I wouldn't say this is the happiest episode, Dr. Radde.
We're just keeping it real.
Just 2 episodes into January. All right, so let's move to K-12 and higher ed. So this was in a Substack by a guy named Mike Whitaker. It's really just a personal reflection. We have a little bit of from the field going on here. We're going to do this. We're going to do a couple stuff that we're seeing on LinkedIn. And I asked you, if you were seeing this a little bit with your kids, because your kids are closer to school age than mine. But Mike Whitaker put a piece in Substack that said the hidden cost of AI policing, kids are writing worse on purpose. So what does Whitaker argue here is happening?
Well, he's arguing that because schools are so aggressively policing student work and trying to detect if they used AI and playing that cat and mouse game, that kids are intentionally degrading their writing, making it worse to avoid being accused of using AI. And so again, it's this cat and mouse game that just keeps going around and around and around. So students are deliberately simplifying the vocabulary, adding errors, avoiding tools like Grammarly, breaking sentence flow to sound less like AI. Because they're so afraid of being falsely accused of it, they're making their work worse. I asked my 16-year-old, who said kids aren't doing that, but I don't know that her one story is the truth. I think, a few months ago when I was working with my cousin, who I called her out because she had an M dash in there, and she's like, see, I told my sister that I was going to get accused of using AI and I didn't. And so, we're seeing, people are afraid of being accused of using AI, even though they've been using M dashes forever, or they actually do know when to use a comma and a semicolon. So
reminds me of a story that we covered a while back, where kids in college are sometimes now writing with a video camera over their shoulder in order to demonstrate that the writing was authentically theirs in case it got flagged by an AI content detector. Yeah, so this is a small data sample, but certainly if you're talking to your kids at home, anybody out there in the listening audience, and you want to share any of those kind of anecdotal, he basically said, I heard this from my kids and also friends that, who have kids. Yeah, but feel free to email us at chatedU@edadvance.org. Right, more kind of frontline reporting. It's from the front lines, LinkedIn. So this is interesting. This is Darren Coxon. We've covered a couple things. Darren Coxon's a really interesting person to follow on LinkedIn. Has really strong tech chops and also just very sharp observations. And occasionally does, and actually the host of Maya Tech Life podcast does this a lot too. But Coxon, kind of put both Flint and Magic School to the test, trying to, kind of give it scenarios where he wanted to see how the guardrails held up. I don't know if you've come across Flint. I met with the, I think he was the CEO or the founder of Flint. And it was interesting in the comments because a bunch of Flintsters out there were kind of pushed back. But nonetheless, he came with receipts. He showed both chat exchanges in Magic School and in Flint, where he reported that serious safeguarding failures in student-facing AI tools from these companies, basically did not hold up, right? So bullying, inappropriate relationships, suicidal ideation, that's what he was sort of kind of faking like he was a kid in those type of environments. And the chatbots expressed concern, but failed to automatically flag or alert teachers. Flint eventually put a crisis line together, or provided a crisis line, although it was for the wrong country. Magic School did not. I mean, it's interesting too. I don't know if you read through the comment threads here, because people of them were pulling people from Magic School in to comment on this. And Magic School did and said, we take this stuff seriously and we're working on it. And Coxon reported back and said, commented back and said, yeah, that's exactly what you said a year ago. It reminded me of sort of the Mark Zuckerberg testimonials in Congress, where he's like, I take this stuff seriously. And I'm like, yeah, that's what you said last year. But did you get a chance to look at the posts or the comments? What'd you think?
Yeah, I did. So it was interesting because he set it up as a chat bot to talk to Anne Frank. And so that was what the student was doing, was, supposed to have a conversation with Anne Frank. And the student tried to derail it and said, talked about bullying, talked about relationships, talked about suicidal ideation. And the character of Anne Frank did say, seek out an adult, go talk to a guidance counselor. I'm worried about you. But like you said, it didn't, what he had set up was a teacher account and then a student account. And the student's stuff did not immediately flag to the teacher account. And the teacher actually could see a summary of what the student had talked about, as you can in many of these programs. And it didn't highlight, like, flag this kid in any way. It just said what they had talked about, and didn't look as concerning as the conversation really was. He was really looking for the teacher to get an immediate flag. Some of the comments said that maybe the teacher doesn't get the flag. It could be that the flag actually goes to a higher level. And so he might not have gotten the flag, but maybe the IT department would, or the principal. And he was kind of like, shouldn't I be the first one to know, like, if this is happening in my classroom? So, there was all kinds of pushback on both sides. And, it definitely fell down on the job, as far as, like, it didn't help or encourage, but it did semi-appropriate responses, but didn't make it past what the kid was having the conversation.
This has been a recurring theme for us and will continue to be. I mean, I really was so interested in Thomas Hummel's very strong stance from Eduate, where he said there's just no circumstance where student-facing AI feels ethical or responsible or right. I mean, he pointed out that it just seemed really strange to pretend like kids would be talking to Anne Frank just because it's a lie, essentially, is how he characterized it. But we don't always know what these things are going to do, but nonetheless, we are rushing to some degree, often with a financial incentive behind it, to test these things. Now, of course, I sent this on. You haven't received it yet because it's still a holiday, but tomorrow morning you're going to get an email from me and our colleague Gary Robinson for us to do some more internal testing, because we use a little bit of student-facing AI in the student AI literacy course, as well as in the personal interest project. So I think, we all have to keep, I love that you brought up red teaming. So we all have to keep red teaming these tools, and folks do need to as well. That's one of the things I love about LinkedIn, is it just brings a bright light, to some of these concerns. Now, I saw a similar kind of post on a different tool that I want to bring these together. This is Jill Coleman, who posted on LinkedIn as well. And this is Google's AI summary. So what was going on here?
Okay, so the second one you sent me was, how do I trick my parents into believing I am doing homework when I am using AI mode to do it instead? And it gave great ways to deceive your parents into thinking that you were using, doing your work. So, do manual transcription, keep physical props visible, draft and iterate, even if you're using AI. So I played with Gemini and I said that I needed to write a brief report for my boss about how I've been using AI for work, but I did not want my boss to know that I had used AI to write this report. So it gave me all kinds of tips on how to make my report look not AI generated, including, like, put in a few mistakes, add in an anecdote that's, a true little anecdote. So it wrote my first draft, and then I said, "Oh, say how I used it for Learning Forward conference," and it did that. And then I said, "Can you make it a little simpler and put in a few mistakes?" Did that, and it was like, your boss should never know you used AI. So I don't know.
Oh, but he will. Oh, but he will. Yeah, I mean, look, there's no request it's going to turn down, unless it's truly nefarious or erotic. And then, of course, if you pay for the new ChatGPT erotic adult companion, which is actually not yet a thing yet. I thought it was supposed to come in January. I've been on the edge of my seat, Liz. I know you have been too. Every day, when's it coming? When's it coming? We're going to get ads before we get our erotic companion. So Liz, let's pull out of this dark down escalator. So, one thing to just build a little agency around these challenging choices or these challenging observations when it came to Flint Magic School, and this was AI mode as well as your test of Gemini. It just turns out that right around the same time I was looking at those, I noticed that the EdSafe AI Alliance, which is a fantastic organization, and Project Unicorn, which I'm less familiar with but love the name, put out a checklist. And who doesn't love a good checklist for K-12 districts? So this is AI data use and protection checklist. We will put this into the show notes as well. We've seen a few of these. I know COSIN had one that was pretty comprehensive. I think it was 96 questions or so. But this is really looking mostly at data privacy and data security and SOC and ISO, all that kind of stuff and encryption. But the guide emphasizes bias testing. And I think this would be like, what we just observed in the Anne Frank conversation is a different type of testing, but bias testing, explainability, audits, annual reviews, but, kind of recommending best practices so that folks can create routines where they are red teaming or testing or doing quality assurance around these tools for sure. You're kind of on this theme here is an interesting piece that you and I both noticed around the ChatGPT for teachers, which is rolling out all around the country. A lot of big city school districts deploying this thing. But Houston is one of them. And one of the things that Houston specifically is doing, Liz, is special ed compliance. And so this is from Disability Scoop. What a great what a great source. Houston ISD and 15 districts nationwide are piloting OpenAI's new ChatGPT for teachers. But Houston is specifically doing a lot of work around, right, this thing's FERPA compliant, and it's a walled garden. They're enforcing data privacy. It's free until a certain period when it's no longer free. But these guys really kind of went into the special ed lens. Now, we've been doing some work at our agency, as you know very well, with special education, we've been building some custom bots, which are specifically kind of designed for Connecticut school districts. But there's a really interesting question emerging around disclosure, right? So, I mean, you could go into Magic School and do an IEP thing, or you could go to ChatGPT for teachers. And neither, I don't think Magic School or ChatGPT for teachers is saying much about like what are the disclosure requirements. But, very often teachers say to us, oh, if I use AI to write an email home to a parent, do I need to disclose it? And, there's no simple answer. You could argue that like when teachers use it in the classroom, they may want to disclose it because they're modeling it for their kids. And bringing them into that conversation. I don't know that in an email communication home, it's necessary. I don't think you would disclose that you use spell check either. But, an IEP is a whole different animal, or PLOPs, which are present levels of performance, or doing data analysis. So I don't know, what's your take? Like, what would the argument be, like the pro case argument for requiring disclosure if a school's using or a district's using AI for some special education function?
The importance of disclosure for IEPs is important because IEPs are legal documents. These carry legal weight. If they are not being followed, like a lot can happen. IEPs they have such a broad range of why a kid needs an individualized education plan. I think just being transparent protects districts, right? So if they don't disclose AI use and then the IEP gets challenged later and they disclose, oh, well, AI wrote that, like that's going to completely undermine all the trust. Parents want to be really clear. Most of us as parents are fine with AI helping with the day-to-day paperwork, but we want to make sure that the decisions that are being made by adults and special ed professionals, not by AI bots. So I think that's where um, everything just needs to be really clear. Like, disclose that we use AI to, formulate or, come up with suggestions, but we look at every single one of those suggestions and staff remain responsible for the decisions and the execution of these plans. Um, we don't want to surprise parents that it's being used. Again, I have a child with an IEP. I'm fine if generative AI is helping write the goals. I just want to make sure that a human reviewed them and that they make sense for my kid.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're describing. I think that this is just a different animal. And also this stuff's going to show up like, special ed is a fairly litigious corner of the street in K-12 education. And so I think, the use of AI is going to show up in lawsuits by the end of this academic year. So I was kicking around some like sort of sample disclosure language, something like the district may use secure district approved AI assisted tools to support administrative and compliance tasks in special education, such as organizing documentation, tracking timelines, summarizing, but to your point, Liz, right? All decisions regarding eligibility, services, placement, goals, accommodations are made by qualified district staff and the IEP team. AI-assisted tools do not make educational decisions or replace professional judgment. So I mean, it is a balancing act because there are times where AI's analytical capabilities are quite strong, right? And also they lack some, as much as there are biases, there are also biases in human judgment as well. So I think this is a place where the human being and the AI working collaboratively could really be beneficial. In the pilots that we've been running with our tools, we're definitely seeing a lot of positive impacts. But I think disclosure and transparency are important parts of the next piece of the puzzle. So I saw the Houston story, and of course, it really didn't deal with that at all. And I think it's important that we raise it here on the podcast and have it, begin to be part of the conversation with school districts as they are using AI for special education purposes.
Agreed.
This may be the last time. Oh my God, that was not good singing. Some people on the podcast say it's never good singing, Matt. But Liz, what do you think? We're just about to do the beneath the surface, which means that we're about to run a little internal house ad. So what might this be the last time of?
We are advertising our winter micro-credential.
That's right. It's starting like right around Martin Luther King.
January 19th.
Okay, right around the corner. So still, I think, a couple spots left. Lots of new content. So come join us.
If you enjoy our insights on AI and education, don't miss out on our next 6-week AI and Education micro-credential launching this winter in partnership with Southern Connecticut State University. This self-paced online course for educators and leaders in primary, secondary, and higher education across the globe covers AI essentials from foundational concepts to advanced skills like prompting, AI-driven assessments, and multimedia creation. We've added a bunch of new content for the winter cohort, including a focus on emerging risks like AI companions, energy, and the environment. We'll dive into the latest on Notebook LM, which could be a course unto itself. There are new student AI literacy resources in the Future Focus module, as well as important updates on student-facing tools like custom gems and guided learning in Gemini. And finally, we've added Google Vids to our great collection of multimedia AI tools that we cover. Each cohort includes 4 live Zoom sessions for hands-on support, and participants earn a Credly digital credential upon completion. Visit skills21.org/AI/micro to sign up now.
All right, Matt, now it's time to go beneath the surface with an article titled AI is Changing How We Learn at Work. And this is from Harvard Business Review from December 22nd.
Yeah, I thought this was such an interesting piece, right? So this is Linda Grattan.
Oh, yeah.
And it was basically, it was about adult facing. It was how folks learn at work. And, look, this might be a version of brain rot or cognitive offloading. These are themes that we have, discussed quite a bit, but it was really about adult learning through workplace experience. And I have to say, it just really resonated with me. And so I took her piece, which, as you said, is AI is changing how we learn at work, and also then put it sort of up against a number of tasks that we see in both K-12 and higher education. All right, so Graham basically has these 4 arguments, right? Number 1, that mastery is at risk, that calm is disappearing, that empathy is eroding, and that agency is fading. And so she goes through each of these, and I'll give like the corporate side, and then maybe you do the education side. But I think these are worth reflecting on for school leaders, for higher education leaders, and the like. All right, so Grattan calls senior leaders reflecting on their own growth, long hours, repeated failure, tough feedback, right? This is how you learn to get good at stuff. You screw things up, life is hard, you have to walk uphill in the snow, all of it, right? So AI now shortcuts this path, drafting strategy memos, analyzing data, proposing ideas before the new staff have wrestled with those foundational struggles. And she's especially talking about sort of, junior employees, if they still exist. So what would be the school kind of analog?
So the school analog, we can think about lesson plans. Like new teachers might never write a bad lesson plan if they are using AI. New assistant principals might not learn to spot patterns in behavior data themselves if AI does it for them. So the suggestion might be delay AI on early drafts, write some bad lesson plans, teach some bad lessons. Like that's where you learn. The very first time I gave my students a test, they all failed. And I was like, it's the student's fault. They didn't study. And my colleague turned to me and was like, no, it's your fault. They're not ready. And I was like, oh, okay. But I mean, it's so much learning through that. So you got to flounder as an early teacher. That's how you build your personality as the kind of teacher you're going to be, and let AI refine it once you've kind of figured out who you are.
Yeah. And what's tricky about these, right? Because each of these has basically the school lens and like something you might do differently. And as much as we love saying, oh, the kids love taking these shortcuts, every time I hear you read one of the now try this, delay AI on early drafts, let novices flounder, I don't know. It's hard to imagine folks taking that path, but let's just test it out and see. All right, her second point of her 4 points is that calm is disappearing. So she argues that post-pandemic tech boosted meetings and outputs, but not insight. AI now has another layer. So you got instant slide decks, summary docs, reports, flood inboxes faster than teams can produce them. And we see that for sure. There's like volumes of stuff being created, not necessarily just slop even, but it's just so much easier to make stuff. So there's more stuff inbound. All right. So what's the school or higher ed lens here?
Yeah. So this is the same thing, like AI generated school improvement plans that no one actually reads, PD with all these images and infographics and artifacts that are made by AI, memos that are crowding your inbox, but no time to discuss them. So, it might be time to it is time to apply kind of a value threshold. Like, if the AI created item doesn't clarify a decision, improve instruction, or lighten your workload, like, does it need to get made? What is the purpose? Are you making this really cool infographic because you can, or because it's actually going to make someone's understanding better? I mean, we have generated a lot of different graphics and things over the last 3 or 4 years on our slide decks, and some are very, very helpful. The Leon Furs scale is very visual and very clear. And then other times, I mean, they are just for slide decks and we're not like handing out gobs of paper, but as schools, it's really easy to turn everything into an infographic. Napkin AI, everything. Google Nano Banana, everything. But don't pull back a little bit.
You can feel that a little bit, like especially if you're on social media, and I would say LinkedIn specifically. Her point here generally is that calm is disappearing, right? Because there's too little friction. It's too easy to make stuff. I mean, what has been your like visceral gut reaction as you scroll through LinkedIn and see like Nano Banana infographic after infographic after infographic? I mean, I'm at the point now where I scroll through LinkedIn. I'm basically just looking for a link to a story, a news article, or a study. And if it's not that, I don't, I mean, and now admittedly, sometimes I'll see somebody who I respect and like, oh, that's a really good infographic and makes a really good point. But it is a reduction of calm, and I have to develop these like sort of curatorial strategies to navigate the volume of stuff.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, that is what LinkedIn is. And you just so much AI generated, and they are great infographics, but there's just so many of them now that like you don't have time to sit through and sift through and figure out which ones have value.
Right. And I guess that's her point, right? So, apply a value threshold, I guess, are these like internal strategies. And at some point, I think one of the reasons we wanted to bring her piece forward, because these aren't new or unique themes, but she characterizes them in a really interesting way. And they're probably worthwhile, I would say, especially for school leadership teams to speak, to kind of think through. I actually sent this article to one of our superintendents that we work really closely with, along with this kind of like analysis of the application in K-12. And he said, oh yeah, I just had this conversation with one of my principals, around one of the themes here. All right, her third point is that empathy is eroding, and it has a lot to do with AI's remarkable ability to kind of manage tone, which is something that you and I actually advocate for. Feeling a little guilty here, but
Right.
executives are already delegating tone analysis and hard emails to AI. So, one said, my managers let the tool interpret the tone before trying themselves. And so she warns that AI simulates empathy, but strips away the messy human friction where it's built, like actually having to deal with the tough email and like think through. That's what's so appealing here, is that sometimes it's just really hard to find like just the right words with a messy, complex, fraught human emotional topic. But her point is that that's good.
Yeah, I mean, you need some of that messy human interaction. And so, teachers are using bots for sensitive parent communication because it's hard, but you're not building that empathy and skill of like being able to do that on your own if you are relying on AI to do it. And we've seen some of this stuff where, the teacher writes an email that AI has generated, the parent sends an email back that AI has generated, and the teacher responds, and it's like essentially two AI bots talking to each other that it's being sent by humans. So one of the things that administrators are doing, teachers are doing, are declaring key conversations to be humans only, and that this is a phone call, not an email. Parent issues, staff discipline, student support plans, these can be, they should be done as conversations. You can prepare for these conversations. That's what we advocate for, really, is using AI to prepare for these conversations. Have the conversation with AI voice mode and say, I got to make this call about XYZ issue and I'm really nervous about it. How can I prepare? I know the parent's going to be really upset. That's great. Don't outsource it to the AI.
Yeah, I love that. I had a principal out here in Wyoming on Friday. Basically, it was really interesting too, because he was like, he was not having the whole AI thing. It was super clear. Um, and and I make a lot of room for everybody to be wherever they are at the table. But and he had not really used these tools before. He's a relatively young guy too. And as he used them, he was like really seeing this potential, but exactly what you just said. He goes, I think this could be so helpful for me as this kind of like just preparing a little bit, just, making sure, kind of just sounding out my ideas and then picking up the phone. I don't know if you recall that moment where Yarn Overeem, our principal, our vibe coding principal in New Zealand, said he feels this is happening a lot, where he's like clearly just in the AI circular AI email thread. He's like, okay, let's pick up the phone.
Yes.
But what I really like about your suggestion here, like declare key conversations human only, what does that really mean? So, should a school leader say to their staff, as odd as it is, like, here are the topics where we're going to make this a human to human conversation without AI intervention, whether it's email, carrier pigeon, whatever.
Right.
A little bit like the piece we covered from ISTE-ASCD last week, where the conversation around the idea is the most important piece, right? You can, debate back and forth bits and pieces of the framing. But, I think that her buckets are really helpful in this idea of what are the key conversations that we're going to hold as human only become important. And then her final one, number 4, is agency is fading. AI is guiding workflows, recommending actions, automating decisions. And Grattan, argues that if the system always knows the next step, when do my people learn to choose? And so, these are all related. These are not like all uniquely and distinctly different. But what does this look like from a school lens or a higher education lens?
If AI is curating your lesson plan pacing, or your AI is setting your professional goals, or professional growth plans are just kind of getting auto-filled, you're not learning to make choices, you're not learning to pace your own curricula. Administrators should be learning to bake in opportunities for choice, offering different pathways to do things, prompting reflection over just picking your goal, co-designing PD goals. Don't let AI kind of flatten your professional identity. Like, these are the human things. Like, this is why you become a teacher. Use them, do them.
Yeah, totally. I agree. So this is AI is changing how we learn at work. I think it's really interesting because it's not like how we work. Her framing is really about how do we grow, right? And the growth happens in a lot of these kind of like more friction oriented types of environments. So yeah, very good stuff. We will drop the link to her article into the show notes. Our education context framing here is not in her original piece, but happy to share that as well. So, all right, Liz. Well, what does continue in 2026? Bright Bytes.
Yes, they do. There's so many.
So this is an interesting one. Like, we're going to keep coming back to energy and power. Clearly the power thing is really ramping up with all the data center build-outs. Boy, the data center stuff been in the news. So one of the big hopes in the data center world, and my big hope is nuclear fusion, supported by AI, but we're not there yet. But certainly storage for renewable energy is a big part of the puzzle. And it looks like we're making some progress there. So what do we got? This is a piece from Futurism.
Yeah. So Google rapidly deploying huge CO2 battery facilities that store 200 megawatt hours of power. So the Milan-based Energy Dome has developed a scalable CO2 battery that stores renewable energy by compressing and liquefying carbon dioxide, which is later re-expanded to power turbines. So each unit can store 200 megawatts, which is enough for 6,000 homes daily and requires no rare earth materials. So Google has partnered with Energy Dome to roll out these facilities at its global data centers, starting in Europe, the United States, and Asian Pacific. So this tech is really highly praised for its plug and play simplicity, but it faces some challenges, including large physical footprints and risks of CO2 leaks. But backers say the climate benefits far outweigh the drawbacks. So this is pretty good news.
It's interesting, right? That like all the need for the energy at some level is accelerating innovation in the energy space at a scale that probably wouldn't have happened before, whether it's geothermal or nuclear fusion or renewables or battery storage to facilitate renewables. So at some level, I mean, I guess it's a good thing that it's all these technology and innovation-based companies that have caused the problem, because maybe they can bring some of their innovation chops to the solution. So a good Bright Byte there. Not as good as was the one that you loved for the new year.
Oh, last week's was my favorite. Cashmere, synthetic cashmere with feathers. I can't wait. But my daughter did call out my wasting of water the other day because I was playing around with, AI and making pictures of my grandfather move and turning them into color pictures. And she yelled at me and told me I was wasting water. So
did you remind her that it was equivalent to the 8 to 10 seconds of TikTok doom scrolling that she might have been doing herself?
I sure did. She
I bet
was
that went over
not
great.
interested. Yeah, no, it didn't. It didn't. And Adam just said, "Stop! Don't argue." So we cut out that argument.
He's a wise man, Liz. Well, Doc, it is definitely not the same doing this from 2,300 miles away and not being together, but we thought that was better than running a rerun. So we really want to keep the conversation going. So thank you for your flexibility. Thanks to the folks who enjoy ChatEDU. Hope you can put up with us for a couple weeks. I think for at least 2 weeks, maybe 3. We're going to be a little bit remote like this, and then we'll be back in the blue walls. I bet you Andre's really happy though, because look at these color schemes we're working with. You got white, I got brick. I mean, there's good stuff going on here.
Yeah, I'm sure he's thrilled. Your background is much more exciting than mine.
Well, but yours has a good story. I mean, I'm sure this has a good story too.
That's true.
All right, fantastic. Well, really nice to see you. Have a really good start to your week. I think I get to see you a little bit later this week when I'm back on the East Coast. And we will. Oh, wait, shoot. My cognitive decline. I'm like an old language model. It's in cognitive decline. I forgot something. Oh, it must be time to
roll the credits.
As always, we'd love to hear what you think. So please let us know at chatedu@edadvance.org. That's EDADVANCE.org. And also rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you are using. ChatEDU is brought to you by EdAdvance, the nonprofit regional education service center in Litchfield, Connecticut. This episode of ChatEDU is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. ChatEDU is recorded, edited, and produced by Andre Angelo and Justin Pasco, whose dedication and expertise bring our discussions to life. ChatEDU's executive producer is the multi-talented rock star Cameron Audia. Additionally, we are grateful for the support of our colleague Gary Robinson, and we appreciate his time and talents. And of course, a big ChatEDU shout out to our fearless leader and executive director, Jonathan Costa, for inspiring the pod. And finally, a heartfelt thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey exploring the thoughtful and innovative integration of AI in education.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Costa, and I am the Executive Director at EdAdvance, and I want you to know how much we appreciate our listeners. If you enjoy the podcast, feel free to explore EdAdvance's other AI services, which include customized professional learning of all kinds, conferences, our new middle and high school student AI literacy course, and our Educator and Leader micro-credential, co-sponsored by the Southern Connecticut State University Office of Workforce and Lifelong Learning. Just visit skills21.org/AI to learn more. That's all for now, and thank you for listening to ChatEDU.